Christine's talking to Corey Nason, David Dreyer, and Evan Rosenblatt about their accomplishments at the April NHRL event on this episode of Outside of the Box.
You could consider the drive being a weapon in itself. It has a lot of pushing power. And so I took those lessons I learned in New Zealand and I played with them.
All I need is top four. That's all I care about. Anything past that is gravy. So yeah, I think we accomplished what we set out to do.
I'm so happy that I got to get that rematch against Turbo Fiend and, get another Golden Dumpster winner checked off.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And I am doing something I haven't done in a while. As some that have watched the show for a while know, for a while there with my NHRL recaps, I would have on all of the dumpster winners from the event. And I kind of stopped doing that just because I wanted to go for what was the most interesting story. But quite honestly, for me in this event, the most interesting story was the dumpster winners. And that's why I'm doing it again for this episode. And so for my first guest, I am so excited that one of my best friends in this world, Corey Nason, won the Golden Dumpster with Synthesis 30. I'm just over the moon to talk about this with you, Corey. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me on. Absolutely.
Yes. So first of all, there's a lot to unpack here because you and I have talked a little bit, privately about your win and like everything else. But what was your sense going into the event? Like, were you feeling like this was the event? Because I know, getting to go on the trip to New Zealand, like that was an amazing experience. And I have to feel like that experience gave you a new level of confidence, being chosen for that, having a really good performance against Team Australia. But like, how were you feeling?
Um, After December finals, well, leading into December finals, I had done a lot of prep because I said, okay, well, I'm getting married next year. I probably want to spend less time on robots and a little more time on other things. When I was asked to go to New Zealand, I hadn't really competed since December. This would have been February, um, the end of February. So it kind of fell in between February and March's event. So it's a once in a lifetime trip getting to go to New Zealand. So it kind of trumps everything. Um, so I had the robots kind of all ready to go. They were very fresh. Um, Going to while I was in New Zealand, there was so much extra time because we had arrived on Wednesday and we had full access to the arena. Took about a half a day to get all the robots ready, and me and the rest of Team USA, we would spend time just driving around in the test box and the arena. And rather than do what I always did, try something different. Just try to feel out the robot, see what felt strong, what needed improvements. And facing Team Australia was very different than anyone back in NHRL because they had different building techniques, different styles of driving, and so it got me to start to try to drive differently. Um, One of the key aspects that I've always kind of had was I tried to emulate other people's driving styles, whether it was more aggressive like Emulsifier, tried to drive like JMO very fast and methodical, and it just it worked out okay, but it never had that clenching fate for me. It would work some, but then I would kind of get caught on the back foot. So I wanted to see exactly what strengths Synthesis 30 had so I could use it during my matches. And what I was finding was I didn't need to necessarily rush into every engagement. I didn't need to be the first person at the opponent because it felt stronger to be the person who kind of reacted to the opponent rather than be the person proactively uh, trying to engage first. And this is where I had this idea of being the second person, like I said, be the responder to the opponent, and as a result, it allowed me to be able to kind of take each match as its own rather than okay, it's the same strategy every match because not every opponent's going to be the exact same. Um, Felt very solid. There was small things that I needed to fix uh, from New Zealand. I had planned on going to April anyways. Said I need to go back. I'm getting the crave to compete at NHRL. A lot of my friends go there, so I wanted to go there as well. It was never. I felt like this was my event. Um, it was a very, very strange experience prepping for the event because I did experience a little bit of damage, but not so much I needed to fully rebuild the robots going into April. Um, so usually I'm finishing up Saturday morning before I physically don't get any sleep and I just physically drive to NHRL. So I'm tired, cranky on Saturday and stressed out. But this time I had all the robots all done. Uh, the Monday leading into the week before the event, and I just made them look good, packed. And then I went down the day before. Everything felt solid. All three robots were ready to go. They were set up a little different for each type of opponent, but overall, I felt confident, not too overconfident, because even though it was a smaller field of 12, a lot of the robots, I mean, it could have been anyone's match going in because a lot of high caliber builders, like a lot of Team MIT, uh, Colorado brought its own university-esque team out, so it wasn't like it was a bunch of pushovers. So it definitely was intimidating, but I wanted to try to play this smart. That's kind of how I felt going into this event.
Yeah, and I think that that is important, with thinking all of that through and stuff of that nature. Now, looking at the actual fights, I think the interesting thing for you was your day. It kind of went one of those ways where like you had one fight that you would have had to do during qualifiers, and it didn't end up happening because of a forfeit, unfortunately. Is that something that like because I think some people could look at that differently. Some people might look at that as an advantage because they're like, "Oh, well, good, that's one less fight that I have to go through." But then others might be like, "Well, I'm not fighting all day and have to go into prime time with like no experience for the day." What were you feeling about it?
I had a bunch of emotions and feelings leading in. So I had the bye the first round. I was the third seed going into this event, so I got a bye. The next match, I would have fought HSS, which is a very scary Manta-esque style four-wheel drive drum. Derek from Gigabyte and Cobalt. He's a very good builder. I mean, he fights on battle bots. I'm not sure if he's the driver or the weapon operator for Gigabyte, and now I'm not sure of his role, but he's a seasoned builder nonetheless. And I saw what he had done in his first match. I was intimidated. It would have been fun to have the match. Derek and I talk off and on here and there on Discord, so I'm familiar with him, and it would have been fun to have a friendly match, but I'm not sure if it would have went my way. He has a smaller diameter weapon. I have a larger diameter, so when we would collide, he would effectively be hitting underneath my weapon, so he would have had the upper hand. So it probably would have gone to him. Um, However, on the flip side, um, I got to go into the brackets with all fresh robots. NHRL does have so the cage that we fight in for the big boss is 16 by 16. Upstairs they have it's roughly a 10 by 10 test cage, so you can do some driving, some testing. Synthesis 30 is a very fast robot, so I can't really do full driving tests, but I can kind of do the slower corralling, spin up the disc, and do a little bit of target practice and whatnot. So it wasn't like I was going in super cold, but nothing really compares to when you're actually fighting a match. Um, my biggest fear was I had all this time, got into the brackets, and now I had to wait till 7 p.m. And I got in there when the doors opened up at 7 a.m., going 12 hours to my first fight and getting blown away or something not working. On camera, you can even see I brought down a second one. I weighed both of the robots because I wanted to make sure they were both made weight. They were safetied. They were all ready to go. So I want, in the event if something stupid happened, I could pull it out and put the backup one. I did ask the pit crew. They seemed fine with it. Evidently, it wasn't fine after the fact, but it is what it is. I brought it down just to be on the prepared side, just because I don't want to forfeit my first match because my robot's not working. I want to do whatever I can. But yeah, no. Like I said, it was good, fresh robot. It was bad because I had to wait 12 hours for my first fight, and it could have been a blowout the first fight.
Yeah, it's one of those things when the fight doesn't happen, you never know for sure how it would have gone. And so sometimes it does turn out to be a good thing in the end that you didn't have to have that fight. Now, obviously, you made the bracket at that point. Had a long day, I'm sure, waiting for that first fight, and it ended up being against Operation Mincemeat, which did lose to Ares, but had a really tough fight versus Salamander where they kind of did a number on that robot. And I mean, Salamander was a robot that had a pretty good day, honestly. So if somebody was able to do something to them, there definitely, I'm sure, would be at least some like, concern going into that fight just to make sure you're doing all of the right things. How are you feeling about fighting them? And talk me through that fight.
All right, so kind of leading up, I had so much extra time, so I was constantly walking around the pits. One thing about pandas, we kind of like to help out, so I did see the aftermath of Team Salamander against Operation Mincemeat. It's very thin framed, and Operation Mincemeat was able to cut through. So I was trying to help them any way they can, but they didn't end up needing it. Operation Mincemeat is a very intimidating looking robot. It's very large. It's not actually. It looks small in pictures, but it's actually a big robot. It matches the size of Synthesis 30, and so I don't have that intimidation factor of being much larger than the opponent. Um, I had I had a feeling they were going to make it into the bracket because the driver Alec, I do follow. He has a YouTube channel and he does drive a robot called Ciernik. He's been doing this for a few years now, and he's definitely getting into the groove of being a very good driver. So I had no hesitation or no misunderstanding of his ability to drive. I knew he'd be able to get around. Um, I watched the robot in the test box. The weapon, it would kick over. It would take an extra second or two. I don't know if they had clogging issues like the motor. It would have slight startup issues, but it would kick it over, and it was really, really fast. It was a large diameter. It had two thin blades, so it had a nice cutting edge. So when it would impact things, it would cut in really nice. One thing that I did notice, going into this event, I tried to be more observant with my opponents rather than go in weapon first for everyone because that doesn't always work anymore. You have to be more strategic and methodical with your driving. I did notice when they were in the test box, they would spin it up to max. Their weapon is blasting as fast as it can. However, that will make your driving become hindered. There was two separate times where they ended up actually on the kick plate on the side bumpers, and so I said, okay, well, that might be something I can watch out for in the event if they do get stuck. I can take advantage. So going into the fight, I wanted to be the second person. I wanted to watch what they did and then react. In the test box, they would do box rushing. They would kick the weapon over and then just charge. So I had a feeling they were going to box rush. I spun it up. My weapon kicks over very fast, just over 1 second to full speed. But I was only spinning it at about 50% so I could have good maneuverability. I moved out of my corner. He kicked the weapon over, starts to move towards the center and charges. Rather than try to collide, I do a sidestep. I go to my right, which is his left, and then as he's getting towards the end of the arena, he turns and he actually gets stuck in the kick plate. Um, so I said, okay, this is pretty much what I had predicted initially. So I go over. For this match, I have two different setups. I have metal tipped forks and then I have plastic forks. The metal tipped forks work better for wider weapons because they can sneak under like a doorstop, whereas a thinner weapon has a better chance of catching that leading edge. So I went in with my plastic ones, like I did over in New Zealand. They were able to take hits a lot better. Um, they're a lot longer, so they're meant to get around opponents. So that way, when I do come in, there's nowhere they're going except the weapon. Unfortunately, being stuck on the wall, I wasn't able to fully reach them. I was able to tap them, and then they came off the wall. Um, they were having driving issues in their first match against Salamander. They lost one side of drive. I'm not entirely sure. Well, they had lost it again in this match. So I believe it was, I'm trying to think, a right side down, I believe. So they're kind of hobbling. I wanted to see what would happen if I would go in and see whose weapon would hit first. Our discs are roughly this, even though they're smaller diameter, they could still reach me. So we kind of tapped. It popped me back, but I was able to regain my control. So I backed off and playing strategically, I was using my forks to kind of hook it in a certain spot and then try to position them in a way where I'm able to get control on them. I get them to the side. Um, I kind of guide them and then they kind of back up into the wall. So right now I'm to their side. I'm being patient, waiting for my shot. Then the opportunity comes. They show the backside of the robot, and that's one of the sweetest spots. So crank it up to about 75. I don't want to put it to 100 and then do some damage to my robot that um in one shot that could be something because of me. So I just start hitting them in the back. I get like four juggling hits. They land upside down. They're chain drive and they lost 3 out of 4 of the chain, so they're not driving. Um, I stay kind of near the front because I want to see what's going to happen. Once I realized the chains were off and they only had one wheel physically working, they were upside down. The weapon was cranking, it was working no problem. They called for the unstick. Um, as a seasoned builder, what you'll learn is when the house robot is going to unstick you, shut your weapon off because eventually it will ram you into the wall. You don't want to break your weapon while they're trying to self-right you, and the house robot just rammed them into the wall, and you just hear a big bang. The weapon didn't die, but I'm sure it was extra damage they didn't necessarily need to take. Um, I could see Alec across the arena saying, hit me, hit me. However, this is a tournament. We're top 8 right now. This is my very first match. I don't want to pop you over and then I just somehow die. I want to give myself the best chance I can, be strategic. Even though he only had one wheel drive, I've seen things happen where a weapon spinning plus one wheel going, they can magically gyro and they have nothing to lose. So it was all on me. I sat there with the weapon spinning. I wanted to show my aggression. I stayed on them. I didn't hit them, but I showed that I was still mobile the whole match. Stayed there. They got counted out. And then that was the match. I think it was like a 30-second match. I wanted to be smart rather than go in brute force.
Yeah, and sometimes that's definitely the way to go. Now, winning that fight, put you in the top four versus Hot Honey, and it's one of those things that, as time has gone on, I've seen that it doesn't really matter what version of Kazaa it is, as long as there is one Kazaa robot. It seems to do well, regardless of what it's paired with, or even if it's by itself. And, certainly we were seeing that throughout the day, with Hot Honey, which was Joshua Reinhardt's collaboration with Team Honeycracked. Not only that, but kind of adding on the extra layer that, it's my understanding that they knew that this wasn't a collab that they could like qualify with, or like, get into pros as like that robot. It was kind of the dumpster or nothing. So they were likely going to be a little bit more desperate and aggressive to win than other people may have been. Um, I'll admit during that fight, there was a point where I was very concerned for you. So I'm curious to hear your take going into it. And were you concerned at that point too?
So, I had a feeling. So, I want to point this out. Joshua is a phenomenal driver. I don't think people give him enough credit. I think the stigma of Kazaa really puts a negative light on Joshua. I've seen him drive with the multi and by himself with Kazaa Hines. He even put up a really great fight against Jamison Go, one of the best drivers, if not the best driver in the 30-pound weight class. So I didn't want to underestimate his ability to drive. And then Team Honeycracked, um, all the different iterations that they have between B4s, Minen, and Plusle, they're getting better and better. So I knew this wasn't going to be a cakewalk, and especially it has fire in it. So no one likes the fire. I'm a plastic robot. However, I've fought Kazaa, I think 3 times now, I want to say. I fought Kazaa before by itself. He didn't have the flame really dialed in. I won. And then I fought him with Peter. I got beached on the wall, but the fire was going and it roasted me. And then I fought one last time when fire wasn't approved, but I was dominated in the control, but I did damage them, so I won that match. Going into this match in particular, I knew the plastic forks weren't going to be the answer. They may have been fine, however, given they're plastic, so they don't really take the ramming impacts very well. They'll start to bend over time, and I'm sure that getting heat, I'm sure it wouldn't help as well too. Um, so I ran with the steel tipped forks. What I notice a lot of people do is they'll take gold tape or the silver tape or the aluminum tape, and then they'll just cover every square inch of the robot. I don't necessarily think that's the good move, because what happens is, even though you're keeping the flame out, you're trapping the heat in, so you're effectively turning your robot into a microwave, and then everything internally is just sitting in that heat. So what I wanted to do was, the plastic, even though it has like it's solid, or it has like you can't look through it, there's still some holes, so like the heat can escape. So I just wanted to get the seams and anywhere where there might have been the ability for the fire to get in. So I didn't really run much gold tape. Kazaa doesn't die, so I knew the plan would have had to have been to knock out um, the honey side, the B Force, and then try to survive for 3 minutes or do the best I can. I had no idea if I was going to win that or not, so I had watched. Usually Joshua comes out first, so I spun it up, got ready. He started to come near me. I went around him, and I was trying to line up a shot with the B Force side, the honey side. Um, as easy as robots are to drive, it's the perspective just made it very weird and awkward to line up a shot properly, and I ended up missing. Joshua came over. He got right on me. He started flaming me, and I said, "Okay, this is pretty much it. Probably. It's going to be like every other Kazaa fight." Sure enough, the 10 seconds ends. He gets off. I get off of him, and then we kind of toss and turn back a little bit, and then a weird thing ends up happening where he gets pushed into me, and I get pushed onto the wall. So he's sitting on my front fork, so I can't initially drive off. One thing that they had done differently at this event, I don't know if it was previously because I haven't been, they shaved off the leading corner of the kick plates a couple inches, so it made it like a 45-degree angle, like a slope almost. Um, so B Force ended up coming in, Honey ended up coming in and knocking Hot off of me. The nice part was I was able to turn the weapon off and kick it on a couple times, and it vibrated me off. So right now, I think Josh thought I was going to be stuck, so he started to drive away. So this was my shot. So I went in, I lined up a nice hit. I slammed Honey into the wall. Josh turns back around, and then he pins me for a couple seconds, but I'm able to gyro off. Honey is again right near the wall. So I literally drive in, I pop him back, he hits the Lexan, and then it sends him forward into my disc. So it's like a double hit. So it was a pretty effective hit. So he's upside down. Cody's upside down across the other side of the arena, the Honey. Josh comes in for one more slight pin. I'm able to get off again. And then what doesn't get shown on the camera, which you can see from another angle, is I crank it to 100%. I said, I need to do this now. He's upside down. So I go full force right into him. I hit him so hard, he gets roofed. I cut through the front, and then I cut the battery lead, so that robot died, and it started bouncing around upside down dead. I hit him so hard, my robot did a front flip. It caught the disc, and then it started to tumble, and it landed upside down. I'm in a weird position where I can't necessarily get out. Josh comes over and he starts to flame me. I call for my unstick. Um, then Josh is trying to get B4 Honey off onto its treads because maybe thinking it's still alive. I don't know if they're communicating I'm dead or not. Again, with the angled kick plates, I was able to just drive right off. One of the improvements Synthesis 30 has recently had was I added pieces of my frame that stick up towards the top. We call them rabbit ears. The idea is when you're positioned on them, your back wheels allow you to still be able to drive even though you're upside down. And I have them in such a way when I turn my weapon on, it'll actually hit the ground and pop over. So I get over. So now it's just me and Josh. So we're kind of going back and forth, back and forth. My robot still feels very strong right now, even though I've been sitting in the fire. But the heat will start to collect, and then it will start to really do damage on you. So right now, I go nose to nose with him. I'm actually able to snap one of his long forks. He said I was the very first person to ever snap the fork, and so I thought that was pretty cool. He turns and he has a lot of pushing power, so I'm actually kind of stuck on the top of him. I'm trying to turn off of him, so on the camera you can actually see I'm like kind of like twisting. So he goes to ram me, and I landed in the perfect position. So he's nose into the wall. I'm to his right side. So I'm facing outward. So I drive out and I turn back around, and he's trying to turn around quick. He's only able to get probably about 90 degrees. So now his right side is to me. Kevin says, let him have it. So I crank it to 100% because there's no driving needed right now. So I just keep grinding, grinding, grinding. Josh is able to start to turn around to get to the other side to try to pin me. With the steel tip forks, they ride the ground really, really well. I had talked to Matt of Emulsifier extensively about his fork construction, the techniques, and just general understanding. I finally really feel I understand techniques on how to use them effectively. So he rides up the fork and into my disc. I hit him so hard, you just see him disappear out of the camera. And then moments later, he comes back down and he cartwheels across the arena. If you watch it from another angle, he hits 5 out of the 6 sides of the arena. So he hit the ceiling, the left side, the back, the floor, and then cartwheeled across to the other side, and then he's right there, and I'm already facing him, so I just drive straight at him. I hit him. At this point, I start to see the disc is starting to slow down, so I've never really ran the weapon maybe 100% or 75 to 100% for a full 3 minutes while also taking heat. The batteries, as they get heat, they start to become weaker. And so my disc, I want to say the battery was completely dead. So I had 20 seconds left. I couldn't just stop. So he's right now, I hit him so hard, speculation right now, that it dented his frame down, and I don't know if I broke the system that pushes the flame out or what, because his flame literally wouldn't stop. It was just kept pouring out, uncontrolled. Like I said, it's only speculation. And right now, he had one side of drive down too. I had both sides right now, so I just go right into him and I prop him up. He's almost against the wall, and I'm pinning him. I hold it for 10, and I start to drive away because I was going to line up like just another push. And then I noticed one side of drive is going down, and the robot was driving perfectly fine prior. So again, I think the batteries, they were just at their wits' end, between the heat and just being. It was a full 3 minutes, just drive, drive, drive. I don't think I've ever driven harder than that. Um, so the last maybe 5 or 10 seconds, I'm kind of moving a little bit. The disc is stopped. The match ends. I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to go because there was the prove it period. However, I don't know if they called it or what, but my guess is Honey was entirely dead, wasn't moving at all. Um, Josh had flame, but I don't know if he wasn't able to control it. I don't know if that went against him or what, but he did have one side of drive down and he did have damage to his forks. Um, I looked good otherwise, not really having much power. I stood there very confused. I said, I have no idea if I won. Sure enough, Sam came over and then he said, I won. And I was over the moon. I said, out of everyone outside of Aries, this match, it just felt so incredible. Just it was just a back and forth. I told Josh and I told Cody, I said, I want a 3 minute fight. I don't want to someone dies in 5 seconds and the match is over. Whether I won or lost, it was just an amazing fight. And today was my day. I won that match. I was so proud, and it hit me that I can't believe I just won. Basically, that's the best explanation I have right now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, against a robot like that, and like you're the, you're kind of the multi-killer. It's just the way that things have gone for you. So, obviously, good job with that. The next fight and the final fight, obviously wasn't going to be any easier versus Ares, which is a previous Golden Dumpster winner, and just, what can you say? I mean, Ares is a pretty scary robot. It's definitely, had some amazing fights in the past, and a robot that you have fought, and I think we're really wanting to be able to take down. Talk about that and just like the process of not only going through the fight, but again, this was another fight where at a point I was like, oh no. Like, my heart just was in my chest for you because I'm like, Corey's made it all this way. He's made it to the finals. And then, like, something happens, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how this fight's going to go. And then you ended up getting the KO in the end, which was absolutely incredible. So, talk about that and just like how it felt to realize, oh my gosh, I just won a golden dumpster.
Um, all right. So leading into this match, so because of the amount of prep I did going into the bracket, if you think about the matches, top 8, top 4, and then the final, so that's 3 matches. I had three full robots working, so everyone on Team Pandemonium said, "You know what, Corey? You don't even need to do any work. You could literally just drop one robot and go on to the next one." Um, I felt my preparation prior prevented a poor performance, the five Ps. Um, so this match in particular, um, I had watched all of the Aries fights because I wanted a rematch. He's Ryan Duarte is a phenomenal driver. He hasn't been in the sport. Well, he's been in the sport for a while, but for the 30 pounder, I think this is the second year that they're fighting. He's so good. He's really on top of it. Is a very scary robot, very powerful. Um, and anytime you're down, they'll just be on top of you. Like when they fought Dead Rise, and Dead Rise was kind of on the ropes. Ryan capitalized. So I knew that it wasn't going to be an easy fight. So I going into this, I had to run the disc. It can take the most hits. It's more durable than my other blade. So hook, it's meant to cut through things, but it's more for like the plastic robots, like if you fight like a huge or something. And then I have the option of steel forks or plastic ones. In my mind, it was telling me to run the steel forks because the way that they work is they're like a door stop. So they always ride the ground. And the idea is when you put it into something like a drum or a beater bar, um, it will stay planted, and then the beater bar will attempt to bite into it. But because they're so hard, it just kind of slides off, and then the robot will slide up into the weapon. um, Emulsifier has shown that they work well, but Ryan's gotten better, so it's becoming harder for Matt to do his thing. Not that Matt's a bad driver. Um, my concern was if he caught me on a bad edge, he could break the arm that holds the steel tip. In addition to being forced to getting under the opponent, my disc is set very far forward as a way to maximize the reach of my weapon. As a negative, anytime I hit something, the robot wants to nosedive. So the forks are set out in such a way that they try to prevent me from flipping forward. So the option was the metal ones. If they took a hit and they got damaged, I may be stuck on my face, or I run the plastic ones. They don't take hits as good as, I mean, they won't get underneath the beater bar as good as the metal ones. They can take hits a lot better, and you can hit them and it doesn't really matter. This is foreshadowing. Um so going into this match, I have nothing but the utmost respect for Ryan. We don't shake hands, we hug. I look up to him very, very much. He's a phenomenal driver. He has such a high spirit, and I've never been around him or heard of negative experiences with him because he seems like he has a very high respect and for the spirit of the sport. So going in, I knew this was going to be a very tough match. So I spun my weapon up. I didn't get out of the corner as quick as I wanted to. I think I was more nervous, so I started to drive a little erratic. He took the upper hand. He got some really good hits that started to bounce me over him. He ended up popping me into the corner, and the back of the robot was up against the kick plate. So when we collided, I couldn't go back any further, so it popped him backwards, upside down, and I was able to get a couple hits. Again, I'm spinning it slower because I want more control of the drive. I'm not looking for those big hits. I'm looking for the better control. Just he capitalized on me. I'm trying to get away every chance I can. This is where the match turns. This is where I said it's all over. I think in the process of bouncing around so much, the electronics for the weapon, they just had enough, and you just see a smoke and the weapon stops. Um, One thing I did work on in New Zealand was driving with synthesis. Even though the weapon's down, the drive motors that I use in them, they're effectively just about as large as what some people use for their weapons. So if you could consider the drive being a weapon in itself. It has a lot of pushing power. And so I took those lessons I learned in New Zealand, and I played with them. Um, I just kept trying to stay in him. The nice part is the plastic forks are long. So when we would come nose to nose, they would be underneath him. So when he would hit me, it would only just pop me backwards, not up. Um, he was capitalizing on me. He hit me once. It bounced me, and I was starting to twist in the air, and then you just see him come in for another hit. Um, Previous to this match, he actually shattered one of his beater bars. Team MIT with Ares had shattered their beater bar against Termigator. This weapon shatter wasn't anything like I had ever seen before. At the When the camera pans over, you just see the entire top half of the weapon just cracked off of the bar. It's broken like down towards the mounting point on one side and then cracked off the top on the other side. It's definitely not spinning. I land on my feet, my wheels, and I have full control right now. So now it's a pushing match. I had seen I felt the life come back into me because every time I've fought Ares, my belts have fallen off, my top plate has fallen off, and my battery fell out or something. So I've always seen the robot die. One of the changes I also made to this version was I have two top plates. I have one that sandwiches everything in. So if the main top plate falls off, nothing is going to fall out. And then I have the thicker top plate, so that way it gives the illusion that there's only one. So it's a kind of a redundancy. So the robot's in full control right now. We're pushing, pushing, pushing. Um, he's pushing me around. Kevin is like turn. So as I'm going back, I'm turning. So it's kind of giving me the upper hand. Halfway through pushing, and I notice he's pushing me. I'm realizing I'm not even like giving I'm only using like 10 or 15% of the drive pushing power. So I start pushing it almost to the full extent, and then that's when I'm getting the upper hand. We go back and forth, back and forth. And I didn't ever expect this to happen. I pushed him and I got him up on the kick blade. Um, then I see Ryan signal to one of his teammates get the house robot. I didn't think synthesis was ever going to stop a house robot, but I thought, hey, I'm going to do whatever I can. So I kind of put it in its way. The house robot goes around and hits Ares, doesn't move. It's trying to come to the backside, and then it looked kind of funny. So you see synthesis with the forks, they're kind of curled over like hands. So I drive into them, and it looks like a person's trying to push against a stone wall, and then I just get popped backwards. Ares gets off. Um, One thing I never really noticed until I watched back the match, because the forks had like a hook like this. When I would go into Ares, he has a lot of like pockets. My hooks actually went inside of some of the pockets. So when I was pushing, it was almost like I was pushing like a shopping cart. Um, so we're pushing back and forth, and Kevin said, "Do it again." So I'm pushing, 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 and then I just see him ride up onto the kick plate. Um, then they started to count him out because he didn't have the unstick again, and it wasn't setting in right then and there. And then it goes 4-3, and then I set my controller down, and I'm like thinking, did I just win a golden dumpster after fighting in the NHRL since July of 2020? They counted him out. Team Pandemonium celebrated. Sam called me over. I was handed my golden dumpster. It didn't feel real that all this time of watching the robot lose to itself or lose to better competitors, my words and my thoughts were I can finally hold the golden chalice at the top of Mount Olympus, standing next to those that I look so highly at, and now I can say I'm one of you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I couldn't have been more happy and more proud because, I mean, as somebody who's been watching you fight for years now and seeing all of the ups and downs, it definitely had to feel really good to get that. Obviously, great accomplishment. I guess the question is, going from here, are you planning on going to the pro event? And then obviously there's more opens the rest of the year, and you have a lot of robots.
I do plan on going to the Pro League because so it has its own set of stuff that you winners get this. I'm looking for more data on what I can bring to champs because um I want to have a good showing at champs, and so I want to find out what doesn't work now rather than later. So I'll definitely be there because a lot of big hitters are going. Um as far as outside of champ, as far as pro league, after that synthesis, he's earned his little break. Um, he has fought really hard. He's gone to a lot of events last year. We're gonna give him the time. He's gonna hang out. I am going to June with a brand new 12, undisclosed right now. You're just gonna have to wait and see what type of sparks and flames and whatnot happen. But yeah, no, Synthesis 30 is gonna hang out and watch the other robots get their shot because I spent so much time doing the 30 last year. I do want to try to branch into the 12s again. I don't feel as though I give the 12s enough time and dedication. I did the threes initially, did the 30s. Now it's time for the 12s.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly looking forward to that. You have, shown that you've had a number of bots who are apex predators in their respective weight classes. So I'm sure whatever you bring in 12s is going to be very scary. So I'm looking forward to it. And speaking of scary bots, and big verts, we're going to be talking to David Dreyer, with Xenomorph in the next segment. So as we continue this episode of talking to all of the April dumpster winners. So congrats again, Corey. Thank you for joining me. And I look forward to seeing more of what you're bringing to the table this year.
Thank you for having me. And I think Blunder is a phenomenal robot, and Xenomorph has my heart with the big verts, but maybe a little something something coming up down the stream.
Well, we shall see. So continue watching this episode, and we will keep going with these conversations with the dumpster winners. All right. And so now it is time to talk about 12-pound robots. And if you've been paying attention, I think that people know that Xenomorph is quite a force to be reckoned with. And man, did it show some kill power in this event for April. So I have David Dreyer here with me to talk about Xenomorph. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. It's good to be back. I didn't think I would actually be back so soon. So yeah, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what can I say? It was quite an event for your robot, and I'm really excited to talk about it because it's one thing to win, but I think you went through quite a gauntlet of formidable opponents and still managed, like, literally tap out or knockout for every single fight. That's crazy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Somebody actually was on the NHRL Discord asking about that, like who had won without a judge's decision. And I was like, I actually think I did that. It's like there's nothing I hate worse than going to the judges. So yeah, I wasn't. If I can help it, I try not to let that happen.
Well, it's funny because the announcers often talk about that and say like, "Hey, if you don't want to have to deal with a judge's decision, don't let it get to that." And you
Exactly.
certainly did that. So we'll just kind of go through the fights to talk
Sure.
about it because everyone like ended in destruction, but I think everyone had its own like unique parts to it. So first of all, before I talk about any of those, going into the day, because when somebody wins a dumpster, I always like to ask them, like, how did you feel going into it? Did you foresee yourself getting that far? Like, how were you feeling?
To answer your question, no. I have this bad habit of like not being as prepared as I want to be. I say every time going into an event, I'm going to have two copies ready to go. And unfortunately, I only had the one, and so I had the one ready to go, and then I was prepping the second one basically all day on Saturday. And normally I get there on Friday as well, but I wasn't able to take off a full day of work. So this is the first time I was not there on Friday. So I came in and safety and everything on Saturday. So it was a little bit more hectic. And I actually didn't get a chance to really walk around the pits and say hi to everybody. It was just a really chaotic day, and I don't know. I didn't. Yeah, I never thought it would go that far. I mean, obviously you're hoping for it, but yeah, I definitely did not think. Honestly, I will say going into this, I did not like. My goal was not to win. It was just to qualify for finals because in February I was one win away, and so I really was like, all right, all I need is top four. That's all I care about. Anything past that is gravy. So yeah, I think we accomplished what we set out to do.
You certainly did. And I think the number of stories that I've heard from people who have said this was definitely not the event where I expected to win, it happens pretty frequently. So I'm starting to think that the less prepared you are, maybe the better you
Hmm.
do. I don't
No,
know.
maybe
What?
that is the winning strategy. Although I will say, I came in on Saturday and I saw, speaking of Corey Nason, he had three fully complete synthesis sitting on the table ready to go. I was like, all right, this guy is where I want to be someday. And obviously it worked out in his favor. So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't, I think being more prepared is not a bad plan.
It's not bad. It depends on the day, depends on the builder. But yeah, we'll talk about your fights. So the first fight was against Caldera 12, and obviously, like Glenn, super dialed in. He's a really strong builder, great guy. As competitive as he is, he's just like one of the nicest people.
Hmm.
But Caldera is a pretty scary machine.
Oh yeah.
For me, in my experience, like as a vert, I preferred to actually fight horizontals. I felt like I had better results against them. But how were you feeling about fighting Caldera?
Yeah, so yeah, this was actually a rematch. I had fought him in finals or at World Champs last year, and I went into it with like my normal vert config, which is just the like outrunner forks, and I only had one secret config, which obviously comes into play later, and so I wanted to save that till the end. So I figured it worked well the first time with just the regular config because he does hit a little bit higher up. I've obviously been having issues with undercutters. I haven't been able to get any kind of bite on them. But the mid cutters I don't seem to have as much trouble with, so I figured I'll just play it again. And I knew I was going to have to tank a hit because I did tank a hit last time where he shredded into the front of the armor. But that is what the armor is meant to do. So I actually was running a set of old armor in that match because I didn't have a ton of the new stuff with the planger forks on it. So I'm like, well, I'll use this one up because I know it's going to get shredded. And that was exactly what happened. He got a couple really good hits on me, but the armor, did what it needed and it soaked up the hit. And I was able to get that weapon to weapon exchange and yeah, I don't think Glenn is used to like his matches ending that quickly. Usually he's like he wins by attrition a lot of times, and that's why like versus him, I really you got to end it quick because he'll start wearing you down if you're not careful. So Yeah, it kind of worked out. Yeah, I got a couple good hits on the drive side, I think, on him, and shredded the. He was actually running PIBA in this competition, which is kind of a new material that a lot of builders are trying out. I actually was going to try it out for Xenomorph, but I was having issues with it printing right. But he was able to get it printing really good, and that PIBA seemed to hold up pretty well. I mean, it definitely tanked a few hits from Xenomorph, so. But ultimately, I was able to get that KO and move on from there. So yeah, that's why if you look at back in the match too, I kind of backed off a little quickly, and I don't think the announcers were even ready for it because they were like, "Oh, something's wrong with Xenomorph." It's like, no, I'm just trying to chill. It's the first match out. You're not trying to go too hard.
Right,
So.
right, exactly. And that's a really good point too about Glenn as a driver, that often it is that kind of attrition where like he just keeps wearing you down. So
Hmm.
good thing that you kind of took him out pretty early,
Yeah.
and were able to get that tap out. Now in qualifying, your second opponent is Galaxy, which
Hmm.
I think is a really solid robot. I think it gets overshadowed on the Georgia Tech team because everybody knows Chonky is like
You're
the
right.
the apex predator there. But it's a good robot. And I thought that like I believe their earlier fight, it looked good. So what was your thought going into it with Galaxy?
Yeah, I somehow didn't know about Galaxy much. Like I don't know how I was sleeping on it because I was like Galaxy, who's that? And then I went over there and I was like, oh yeah, I remember him. And I was like, oh no, because he's got a vert that's scarily as big as mine, and he does have a shuffler bonus. So I was like, woo, he's gonna have a little bit of a weight advantage on me. And he's got so much power in that weapon. If you saw in the match, I mean, he just pinballed everywhere. I mean, he's got so much torque in that thing. I was very concerned. I'll be honest with you. The only thing I was hoping for is that with shufflers, sometimes, not all the time, they do hurt maneuverability a little bit. I've noticed, especially in the bigger weight classes, maybe when you get to the Beatles, man, the shufflers really move so well. You really almost can't even tell the difference. But seems like when you get up to 12 pound, it doesn't quite have that maneuverability. So I was hoping to outmaneuver them and just stay super aggressive. And that was the strategy going in. And yeah, I was able to win those first couple engagements. And Xenomorph's whole strategy is to just kind of stay on them, stay aggressive. Kind of like the monster in the movies. It's like you don't want to let them breathe for a second. Because when they're bouncing around and they're not planted, then you're able to control the match. So yeah, after that first hit, I don't think he was on the ground on four wheels, so to speak, for more than 10 seconds. Yeah, he was trying, but I don't know what killed him at the end because he doesn't have any bunny ears or anything, so he's relying totally on the weapon to self-right, and it seemed like that last hit just totally killed him. I actually didn't get a chance to ask him what happened, but yeah, he just seemed to die in that last hit, and so yeah, I was thankful that I actually didn't really take any damage going into that because, like I said, I didn't have a ton of spares of the new armor, so yeah, I was super pumped that we got another quick KO moving right into the bracket then. And yeah, Xenomorph wasn't sweating too much at this point. Yeah, I was starting to feel pretty good at this point for sure.
Yeah, that's where you want to be going into the bracket. You want to be feeling good and stuff, not kind of like limping in there and like just getting in, and then you're kind of on the back foot at that point.
Hmm.
But your first opponent in the bracket was from another Southern college, from Florida, which is
Hmm.
Steggy, and gosh, I love that robot. I've told John before I love that robot. And it is very tough. It
Hmm.
has a couple different configs and things like that. So you kind of have to be on your toes when you're fighting it. But what was your opinion? And how do you feel like that match went? Because it did end in a KO and not a tap out.
Yeah, you're right. I love that bot too. Honestly, it's got a great aesthetic, really well built. Yeah, John's a great guy, and yeah, that was my first time fighting a modular opponent, which definitely adds a new element to kind of the pit game, so to speak, the config wars. And yeah, we weren't sure actually what config they were going to run because there were some rumblings in the pit that their undercutter config was having some issues. And that was obviously the one that we were most worried about because it's kind of similar to, Buzzkill, especially. It was, he's been getting us. So I'm like, man, we got to fight another undercutter. And yeah, so we weren't sure. We actually walked over to them and just was asking, and they were like, oh yeah, we're running the undercutter. So I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, all right. But yeah, and then like I said, we only had one undercutter config, and I was really not sure if I was going to run it or not because I'm like, man, if I don't run it and I lose, then it's like, well, what was I saving it for then? I'm out anyway. But I was looking at the bracket, and at the top of the bracket was Maximizer. We were like on the opposite sides of the bracket. So as soon as the bracket was posted, I was like, man, if we go far and Maximizer goes far, there's a possibility we might meet in the finals. A possibility. I wasn't like, this was wishful thinking at the time, but I'm thinking like, man, maybe there's a chance. So I'm like, all right, we're going to save the undercutter config and we're going to gamble. And yeah, going into the match, I wasn't sure until I got to the weigh-in and I seen Steggy with the undercutter config. I'm like, no, he got it working. And yeah, so I was a little concerned because, going into this competition, Xenomorph was like 1 for 5 on undercutters, basically. We got one win at Motorama on an undercutter, but, other than that, we were really not doing well against undercutters. So I was honestly a lot concerned going into this match. And yeah, at first, it kind of was going the same way as our Buzzkill matches, where I just could not get any bite. I was like ramping over top of him. He's got a very similar front end to Buzzkill with the sloped V shape, and the blade is so close to the ground, so I was struggling to get any bite on it. But I just kept going head on, and I was like, all right, one of us is going to win this exchange for the better. And eventually, I was able to get a bite. Finally, that was like my first bite on a real undercutter. And yeah, like I said, once you get destabilized, I'm trying to come back in quick, and we were able to capitalize once we got that initial hit, and he was never able to really get stable again after that. And yeah, we tossed him around. I think we got a really good shot on their top plate when they were like kind of doing a gyro dance. I know that game. And yeah, I saw the guts kind of hanging out. I'll be honest, I didn't realize that from my angle, I actually couldn't see that the battery was hanging out. And he, up until like that, like right before I hit him that last hit, he was still moving. Like his weapon was still going. Like he actually moved himself over to that spot. So like, I'm like, oh, he's still going. Like maybe his guts are maybe slightly hanging out, but he's not tapping. And, the match seems to be still going. And yeah, I went in for that last hit, and as soon as I did, I was like, "Oh, we got the battery." So yeah, that was a little spectacular. I a little feel bad in hindsight. I don't mean to to try to kick a dead horse while it's down, but yeah, it did make for quite a spectacle for sure. And actually, looking at the match back, I don't think it actually really did that much damage, although I'm sure John will be able to say for sure. It looked like it really just got the battery mostly. It actually seemed like the hit prior to that was the one that really did all the damage, but there's no way to say for sure. But yeah, well, especially not counting the battery, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think much like many NASCAR fans watch the races for the crashes, I think there's combat robotics fans that watch for the lipo fires. So
That's me. I'm that guy.
Yep. So, got then into Prime Time versus Luna, which I believe is a new robot. And, when you have a robot that's newer, there can be a lot of like questions because you don't have like prior, events to look off of and kind of see what it's done. So how did you approach that one? Because it would have been a little bit different than maybe some of the others where it was more familiar robots.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. So, yeah, I believe this is his scaled up version of Comet, basically. So, you see Comet do really, really well in the 3 pound class. And, he's a great builder. And, just looking at the machine, you could tell it's a new bot, but it's definitely not a new builder. So, yeah, he's got a lot figured out already. There might still be some new bot gremlins, but he was undefeated at that point going in, and his matches looked very competitive. So this was definitely if it wasn't for Steggy with the undercutter config, I was almost just as concerned going into this match, honestly. He's got, I mean, that blade on that thing is thicker than Promheta even, and it's like, woo, mine looks like a pizza cutter compared to that. So yeah, I was really concerned, and honestly, he was so small that it was really hard to actually even get a bite on him. A lot of times, like he was so small, he was able to hit my front end and avoid the weapon, especially because he's got kind of it like tapers. His design kind of tapers, which is kind of unusual build. A lot of people are like flat-sided or kind of a square aspect ratio, but he's got a taper to it, which lets him kind of get in closer without taking a hit. And yeah, it was really working for him for those first couple exchanges. And yeah, I saw a belt come off early, and I'm like, I didn't know whose belt that was. I'm like, ooh, is that ours? Is that his? I couldn't even be able to sure because he seemed to be driving just as good. Like it didn't seem to affect him at all. And then I got another hit on him and then took a belt off, and I knew that was his belt that time. But even still, that must have been his front driving his front wheels. He must have that bot weight distribution really well balanced because even with just being on rear wheels, it honestly seemed to drive perfectly fine to me. A lot of times when bots lose the front wheels, they kind of drag the front a little bit, and they definitely lose maneuverability. But yeah, he didn't seem to be hurting for maneuverability at all. And yeah, so we got lucky again that we were able to destabilize him and then get him on the what's it called, the kick plate. God, I hate those kick plates. So the kick plates giveth and the kick plates taketh away. In this match, they wound up helping me a little bit, and he got stuck on there. And the first unstick is free, and we got him off that without him calling the unstick, and we got a couple engagements back, and then he got back on the kick plate again. And I was like, all right, we'll let him call for the unstick this time. Meanwhile, I'm like maneuvering into the optimal position to get a hit on him. As soon as that light turns blue, I'm like, I'm in. We're back in it. So yeah, we get a couple good more hits on him, and again, kind of like Galaxy, it seemed like his bot just kind of died there at the end, and yeah, he tapped out, and that was another good KO. But I'll be honest, definitely felt like we were on the ropes there, or taking a beating back a few times, and it was starting to feel like it was going back and forth, and you just don't know, you could come out strong, and then they start whittling you back, and you're like, whoa, we gotta rethink this a little bit. But we were luckily able to capitalize on him getting stuck on the wall and just take it from there and get the KO.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the deeper you get into the bracket, I think you expect the level of difficulty to continue to ramp up. But that win got you to your original kind of goal of making it into the top four.
Yes.
And of course, all that stood between you and the finals at that point was 12 speed, which
Hmm.
also was kind of a robot that had been really kind of kicking butt and taking names the entire day. So yeah, I mean, another scary fight, but Xenomorph certainly seemed up to the task.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had seen 12 speed last year at an event. They're also from Gator, I believe. Same team as Steggy. And yeah, they got a great looking machine. I really like the aesthetic of it, kind of like an industrial build kind of vibe with the tracks and everything. Just really kind of a stout looking machine. And they had just taken out Lottery, which was on like a tear that day and looking really strong. And I'll be honest, I was like, man, if we got to fight Lottery, like this is not good. Like they're looking really strong. And then I seen 12 speed kicked their butt like handedly. So I'm like, well, shoot, like if they kicked Lottery's butt that bad, then we're going to be really struggling, like we're going to be in for a tough fight. And yeah, like, I mean, they got a great machine now. They did have some issues, I think, with weighing in. They were slightly overweight. They weren't sure why. It was the same config that they always run, but I don't know. I've ran into weird stuff like that. Like I've even had like my 3D printed material. It soaks up moisture over time, and that'll add weight and everything. So you just don't know why. But they were a few ounces under or over, so they had to actually pull some screws out, which is never ideal going into a match when your front wedge is held on by like three screws, I think it was. But even still, I mean, they were looking really strong. And yeah, I mean, it was another match where we luckily kind of got that first engagement. I don't know. I'm not like one of these guys that tries to get fancy with the driving. I probably should, but I'm more of a like, all right, we're gonna send it in, and just see what happens, and then go from there. If stuff starts going bad, we'll dial it back and change tack. But usually, my first strategy is just to go in and hopefully win that first engagement and capitalize on that. And yeah, we were able to do that. But they've got a really well built machine, and they were taking the hits. And for a while there, I mean, they were taking the hits, but they kept coming. They kept moving, and they were still trying to engage. And at one point, they even I actually got stuck on the wall. That kick plate again. I'm telling you, man, that thing is brutal. I lost a match to that, so I'm like really freaking out. And luckily, I hadn't used an unstick or anything at that point, so I called for my unstick. And luckily I had that in the bag, because actually I would have lost that match because I was stuck on that kick plate pretty good. I like meant to turn a little bit earlier, but I turned too late and I just gyroed right on top of it. And luckily Brett was right there and he was able to get us free. And then meanwhile, 12 speed I think was having a little bit of mobility issues, but they were still moving somewhat, and they actually called for an unstick themselves. I saw the blue lights. I'm like, all right, they want to keep it going. They're not I didn't hear no tap out, and yeah, it kind of went sour for them real quick after that. Their unstick was called. And yeah, I'll be honest with you, I even myself wasn't ready quite for the destruction that followed. I know they probably weren't as well. I do kind of feel bad. I probably went a little hard there at the end, but it was, you're coming in. This is the fight leading up to the finals. You're leaving nothing on the table. They were still in it. I'm like, all right, if you're in it, I'm in it. Yeah. So yeah, it turned ugly kind of quickly there at the end.
Yeah, the adrenaline just takes over sometimes.
Yeah. The xenomorph blood was definitely running deep in those final moments.
For sure.
Oh yeah. I know I've been on the receiving end of a beatdown myself, so hey, it comes around, goes around, I guess. But yeah, I do hope that they're able to get 12 speed back, because as you said, they as well qualified for finals and pro tour. So I do hope that they're able to get the bot back in shape, because they got a great machine there. And if they continue to improve it like they did, I don't see why they can't be in the finals as soon as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Now, obviously Xenomorph was on a tear, but there's Maximizer, who it's one of those things that, like, I think the last time that Jake won a dumpster, it was one of those days where I just kind of watched throughout the day, and you can just tell when somebody has like the eye of the tiger, and it's like, that like almost nothing is going to stop them. And I really felt like I was seeing that from Jake in this event as well. And I was like, oh man, like Xenomorph's looking really solid, but this is going to be a very tough fight. And it was like in the beginning, it was a little bit back and forth, but Xenomorph obviously at a point kind of took over and was able to get the KO in the end. So talk through that a little bit, like how you were feeling, going into it against Maximizer,
Yes.
and then like how you felt through the match and obviously getting the win in the end.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, the story kind of begins like immediately after that 12 speed match. So, uh, I had never been to this point in competition at Norwalk before. I had been as a partner, like a pit partner with Brendan with Slam Plan when he went and won his dumpster. So I kind of I knew what was coming, but I still wasn't ready for it. And they are so tight on that schedule at the end, man. You have to be dialed in, and we didn't even know if we were going to be fighting Maximizer at first because we were the first semifinals match, and I was thinking like, man, this is actually not a good position to be in because we're not going to know who our next opponent is like until like 15 minutes later when Maximizer starts fighting Supernova. So I had somebody watching the stream while I'm like charging my batteries and stuff because I didn't want to commit to a config yet because it was really going to take some time to swap everything over. So he's like, I'm like, all right, how's Maximizer doing? How's he doing? I'm like, oh, well, I don't know yet. There's some back and forth. Then he's like, oh, Supernova's on fire. I'm like, all right, that's all I need to know. That's all I need to know. We're prepping for Maximizer. So yeah, like how I alluded earlier, I'd come up with this config for undercutters. I'd been getting my butt kicked by these undercutters time and time again, and I had tried a small little D2 wedge what was it? Yeah, I think it was at finals. Yeah, no, was it at? I think it was February. Yeah, I had that little D2 wedge, and versus Buzzkill, man, he ripped that thing off in one shot. I was like, well, that didn't do any. I was hoping for one hit. That's all I was hoping for. I didn't even get that. It got ripped off without even getting a hit. So I'm like, all right, we got to come up with something different. And I had two plans. I had the plan that you saw with the baleen, and I also had like a dead rise style plow, like up out front, kind of outriggered out front, because that seemed to be very effective as well. The only issue with that is, man, that's a lot of titanium, and that was going to be a sizable amount of investment into making a huge bent titanium plow that would be able to encompass the whole front of Xenomorph. So I'm like, all right, we're going to try the cheaper option first. And I'm like, all right, I seen it worked on, that's a lot of TPU against Grim Ripper. He had the baleen, and I'm like, that could work. It might slow him down and jam him up, and then I'd be able to use it as a ramp. So I was going into that, and yeah, we were prepping the config. It also meant that I had to swap the blade to a less weighty blade. Like it's the same diameter, but it's a bar shape that's about a pound less, way less moment of inertia, which allowed the weight for the baleen. And it also had the very nice advantage of not gyroing nearly as much. So we're prepping for the config, and I mean, I'm so locked in trying to get this thing on there. I could hear Jake because he was pitted like a table away from me. He's like, "What is that? That's diabolical." I'm like, "Yes, that means I'm doing something right," because he's starting to freak out. And I don't know though. I was still going into that match. I was still really nervous, because he's Jake, and like you said, he gets locked in, and he was definitely locked in that event. And so yeah, going into that match, I'm like, all right, it's gonna be 50-50. Well, I was like, we're gonna know right away whether or not this baleen works. And yeah, thankfully it freaking worked, man. We went in there. I think one of the announcers said it was like a fortress in the arena. I mean, with the gyro being so much less, I was able to just turn as much as I wanted and be able to stay squared up with him. And it basically just negated his whole strategy because anytime he's trying to attack, he's swinging into my front end and just riding right up the front end. Excuse me. We were able to just, get like hit after hit. And, but I'll tell you what, Jake's got a strong machine though, because I mean, yeah, maybe the blade wasn't hitting quite as hard because of the less weight, but I mean, he was just tanking hits. I mean, we were giving out some really good hits, and it didn't seem to be phasing him at all. Like obviously, it was sending him up in the air and getting him messed up, but like he seemed to be coming back down and was still driving, was still spinning. So I'm like, well, shoot, how are we gonna beat this guy, And yeah, he's got such a sharp blade that he got it caught in the kick plate. He got it caught once, and I got him free that time. I was like, all right, the first time's free, And he got caught again, and this time I let him use the unstick. And again, like I was like ready there waiting. I was for a moment I thought about playing that jam up the house spot kind of move, but I'm like, all right, I don't know if I have the power to do that. But what I will do is just start hitting him as soon as it turns blue and just block the house spot from even able to get to him. If I'm in front of him hitting him, the house spot can't save him. So yeah, we just came in there, and I think I was the one that actually unstuck him. I don't even think Brett actually even did anything in that unstick. I think that was me that unstick him. And then, yeah, after that, we just kept wailing on him for a little bit more. And yeah, the kick plate gods giveth again, and he gets stuck for the final time with no unstick left. And for a moment, I was like, do I go in for that hit again? And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm like, this is the finals. We're just going to let him sit right there and get counted out. And yeah, and honestly, in that count out moment, it was so surreal because I'm like, oh my God, I think we're gonna win. Like I've never been here before. Like this is weird. Like I can't believe we're actually about to win this whole thing. And it was like in that moment, it like sunk in, and I was like, oh man, I was overjoyed. I don't know who was higher, the crew up in the Orion capsule or me at Norwalk.
Yeah, valid point, valid point. Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing run and, an amazing win in the finals over just an insanely good robot. Now I believe I heard that you are bringing Xenomorph back to the May event or June.
Yeah, so I did qualify actually for the Pro Tour event back in February, and I had gotten the invite, and I wasn't sure if I was going to go or not. It actually kind of depended on how well I did at this event. I was like, well, if I qualify, then I'm not going to Pro Tour because I'm like, I don't really see the point. But I wound up winning. I'm like, oh wow, okay. And then so I was like really on the fence about going to Pro Tour, but it kind of just worked out. I was able to get that day off from work, and I don't know, I didn't want to miss out on the fun. It's something different. I'm really hoping that Norwalk does something special for the event. They've been kind of light on details. I know a lot of people are kind of still waiting on details if they're going to come or not. They're saying that they're going to like give a stipend per match. I'm not really sure how that's going to work. I'm just really in it for the fun, I don't know. You talk to any builder, they're not in it for the money, you know. So yeah, I am. As of right now, I am currently signed up for the Pro Tour event in May, and so yeah, I'm hoping that's going to be a fun special event, and that should be a fun time. Now, obviously, the level of competition is going to be a lot higher than when you're at like an open event, so we'll see how Xenomorph does. It might be a good opportunity also maybe to test a few things. Because actually my whole goal for getting Xenomorph qualified is I wanted to get it qualified early in the year as I could because I really want to try to get a Beetle qualified at Norwalk. I know that's kind of a tall order, but I figured maybe I'll just rest Xenomorph then for the rest of the year and then take either my existing 3-pounder or I'm maybe working on a new one to bring there and maybe qualified. But God, there's 3-pounders that have been high level 3-pounders that have been going there for years that haven't been able to do that. So we'll see.
You never know. Sometimes it's just who you get matched up against, but
Yeah.
that would be exciting to see if you bring anything like that. Well, I'm sure we'll all be excited to see Xenomorph at Pro Tour and whatever other events you might go to throughout the year. But just amazing run, and obviously big congrats on the dumpster win.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it, Christine, for having me on. And yeah, it's been a blast. And yeah, the perseverance finally paid off, and we got the golden dumpster sitting there. And yeah, maybe there'll be more in the future. Who knows? I don't know. Like it's going to be tough to catch up to someone like JMO. You know, his wall's probably getting full of them by this point. He's probably ran out of room and he's just chucking them in drawers somewhere at this. You know, he's like, I don't. What am I going to do with all these? I'm
Maybe.
content with just the one right now. If that's all I get, I'll be happy.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, for those that are watching, keep watching this episode. We have more. We're talking to all of the dumpster winners from the April event, so stay tuned. All right, we are back for the final segment of this episode, and I'm kind of doing this in reverse order from the way that I normally do. But I mean, realistically, when you look at the Beetle bracket, there's a lot to unpack. It's a lot of fights, and of course, it was an exciting day for this guest, which is Evan Rosenblatt from WPI, who I have not had on the show before. So I'm so excited to welcome you to the show.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm honored to be here, and I'm excited to run through some fights and give some insight.
Yeah, it's always a good thing. I mean, I know that for me, I watch as much of the entire day as I can, but of course, there's so many fights. They don't show them all in the mainstream. It would probably take a long time to just sit there and watch every single one from the Brett Zone. So I learn a lot by, by hearing this in the interviews as well. Before I get into the fights, because you haven't been on, something I really want to kind of dive into real quick is just talking about your robot and your experience in combat robotics. This wasn't Blunder's first event, um,
No.
but I do want to talk a little bit more about it just for the viewers and listeners who may not be as familiar with you or Blunder.
Of course. Yeah. So I'm a current senior at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. So we have a pretty big, scene here at WPI. I'm sure most people have seen the team around at least once before. But I officially started with the team back in my sophomore year. So we have a lot of people that compete in smaller weight classes. So we do internal competitions for 1 pound plastic ant weights all the time. And like all of our other team members, that's how I got my start too, with plastic ant weights and just learning the basics of combat and how to not make things explode. You would think it's pretty easy, but as everyone knows, it's not as easy as it sounds. But I started just trying to get something fun. I'd been very focused on all of my classwork. Starting my sophomore year is a big jump. I was living off campus, so I needed something to tie me in, bring me back in, and that was combat for me. So I started my first ever robot, and I knew I wanted to do something strange, something a little goofy, and that to me was shufflers. I know people have their opinions on shufflers and weight bonuses in general, and for the most part, I agree. Nerf shufflers. But I do think that, for a person that was starting out for the first time, it was a good challenge to get me interested into combat robotics and give me something to hyper focus on. So I started with that. I made my first ever robot was a shuffling drum named Whoopsie Daisy. At the time, it did fairly well, but most importantly, I learned a lot. And eventually, that robot evolved a couple times and is now a 2-time event winner. So, it's come a long way. And from that, I decided, why not take the ridiculousness and step it up to 3 pounds? So that is what Blunder is. My first ever attempt at a 3 pound robot, and it's been quite an adventure so far. Um, it's never what I expected, but it's been a lot of fun. I've been to so many different events. My first ever NHRL back in February of last year, I made it into prime time, which was incredible. And to think that that was my first event ever is still quite ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you have, good circumstances happening in that first event and it just works out
Yeah.
for you. Obviously, like prime time is great. Like most builders, I think, would just love to make prime time and they'd be happy for the rest of their lives with doing that. So yeah, that's wonderful. And I think it's kind of a cool like thought process to have an idea and then continue to iterate on it and evolve it into something different and then see that like reach the pinnacle essentially of what 3 pound combat robotics is at this point. So given all of that, because certainly like Blunder had, a pretty good, record showing and everything before this event. What were you feeling like looking at the, the field, the competition, what kind of shape your robot was in? How were you feeling coming into this?
Well, I was feeling pretty bad, personally. The robot on Thursday night before the event, still in a ton of pieces. I was still making parts. So, the classic procrastinator ways, but I got it done, and that's what matters. But my team, especially Ben Howard of Showtime, he's been putting it in my head for the last probably month before that. Ever since he got that dumpster in hand, the first time I saw him after that, he came up to me and said, "You're next." So, the team's been super supportive, and they had much more confidence than I did, and I'm glad they did because it definitely pushed me a lot harder than I think I would have pushed myself.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good point because I mean, like, I think WPI has always been, at the top in terms of teams. You see a lot of wins and things like that with the folks that have come out of there. But I think that it's been a little while, especially seeing like back to back dumpsters. So
Yeah.
I don't, maybe there's a WPI resurgence going on right now. I guess we'll see how that goes moving forward. But yeah, so. Well, that's good. It's so funny that you say like, you weren't necessarily confident because I would find most of the time when I talk to people who won dumpsters that event didn't necessarily feel good or prepared going into it. So I don't know what that says about like what happens, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of a theme. Now
truly.
for the first like the qualifying fights, I mean you were, it was kind of fortunate that you ended up against a couple of robots with less experience. That doesn't always equate to a win, but it does give you typically better chances because new robots 95% of the time have some kind of gremlins going on. But let's talk about, briefly those qualifying fights versus Sir Nigel and Divergence, and like what your takeaways were from that going into the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, the first fight for me is always quite nerve-wracking. Getting into the box for the first time in the day is always terrifying. And if you watch me before that fight, I'm sitting there like unable to sit still, ready to get going. And the first fight takes the jitters out of me. But it was so much fun. The first fight, Sir Nigel, they're such a nice team from I believe Rutgers. They have it's I believe it's supposed to be four-wheel drive. I don't know. Their listing said four-wheel drive, but the robot looked two-wheel drive to me. Um, but it's a vertical spinner. I believe they had a flywheel on it as well, which they chose not to run against me, which I think I agree with. I don't know. Uh, but it was a lot of fun. The team was super nice, and the match ended pretty quickly. We really got only one good hit on them, and apparently their robot shorted and turned off the the receiver. So it was a bit of a letdown, unfortunately. I wish it could have kept going, but it does make me feel good. First fight of the day going well, and I believe once the NHRL wiki gets updated, that should be on the list of fastest KOs. So that's something. It feels fun. It feels fun.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And then you fought Divergence.
yes. Divergence, another four-wheel drive vert. I feel like that's my bread and butter at this point. That's what big beaters are meant to fight. It's a super fun time. They were a super nice team. The goal, as always, just keep on them. Try not to, go head on, and then see what happens. So we had a nice little engagement right at the start of the match. Front on front, pretty much. And from there, they just spent the whole match upside down. And I was trying to line up good shots, get a little bit of drive practice in, see what I could do.
Yeah, and I mean, really, I like honestly, I enjoy the qualifying round because especially like if you're going in and even if you're feeling pretty good, it does give you a lot of data about your robot for the day, to kind of give it a little bit of a test and see how it does going into the bracket. And that can kind of like either assure you, hey, I feel like I'm in a pretty good place, or maybe if those fights don't go as well, then you're like, oh, I have some stuff that I need to work on, kind of moving forward. So
True.
it's a good trial period, but luckily going 2-0 in qualifying, that put you in a better place in the bracket, not having to go through the play-in round and everything, which, you never know who you're going to get matched up against there.
Indeed.
But in the bracket, your first fight was against Camino and Aaron Taggart, which that is a bot that is older than this podcast, I'm pretty sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, talk about it, tap out, tap out or KO, I think is the best you could hope for. And you did get the tap out on that one. So how do you feel you were able to accomplish that?
Well, this one was quite interesting. I mean, before the match, we were talking and just comparing our bots a little bit. Um, my teammates always make fun of me because Blunder has kind of a ridiculous battery capacity for 3 pounds. I had some battery issues back at some previous events and went, ah, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to put the biggest one I can fit in. And so, people make fun of me for that, but I think it pays off. So this was the match I was scared about, and you know it kind of didn't live up to the hype. We had really two fantastic hits in the first maybe 20 seconds of the match, uh, which were fantastic to watch. On the first hit, we go opposite ends of the arena. I'm on my head for basically the next 5 seconds trying to, get back right side up. And he comes in and gets a perfect hit while I'm upside down, sending both bots across the arena. If you're going to watch the fight, do it. Watch the first like 30 seconds, and then you'll see. Because unfortunately, Camino loses a drive side after that engagement. And I get maybe about another 10 seconds of driving before I then lose a drive side. So, it was a tough fight. Both of us spent about 2.5 minutes just kind of crab walking, trying to get near each other at all costs. And, it didn't happen, unfortunately. There was one little engagement right at the end where I got maybe like, I maybe got a half an inch off the ground, and that was it. He did end up tapping out, but he told me that it was unintentional. He meant to call for the unstick. So that is tough. That is unfortunate. The NHRL boxes at the cages are, not always the nicest things to engage with, but thankfully, I don't think it changed the outcome of the fight because his battery was entirely dead by the, like 20, 30 second mark left in the match. So I don't feel too bad about it, thankfully. I would feel awful if, there was still life and he had accidentally tapped out. That would have, been awful for me. But I don't feel like it changed the outcome. So thankfully that was not the worst ending for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you there. I would think that if I was in a fight and somebody accidentally tapped out, I would feel really terrible. But like you said, if the outcome wouldn't have changed, which I would agree, it doesn't seem like it would have, then it doesn't really change anything. So, yeah. Well, I mean, good first win in the back in the bracket, and going out of that, your next fight was against Jackalope, and I mean, I I love Gwen. That's a fun robot. I think, Gwen has done a phenomenal job with it, obviously, and had a lot of success. I would say that, it's one that a lot of people now are afraid of if they see themselves matched up against it because, it can do quite a bit of damage.
Yeah.
And it's pretty durable too. You were able to get the knockout there, so let's talk through that.
Yeah, I mean, Gwen is amazing. I've talked a lot with her, and she's just fantastic. She's a WPI grad student now, so I guess you could call her adjacent team WPI. We still care for her. She's still part of our umbrella, but you know, she was long successful before officially becoming a student here. Um, but I'd seen Gwen a couple times throughout the day, and she loves to trash talk. I enjoy a little trash talk too. So we'd been button heads like friends do for pretty much the whole morning, which is a lot of fun. We knew that we would end up matched up against each other if we continued to win. So this was a super fun match for me. I really respect Gwen, and Jackalope is a fantastic robot. So it was an absolute blast. As someone who drives a robot with a really large beater, the goal of the game, always just stay pointed and don't show your back. And for the most part, that worked. Um, Jackalope's forks were very good targets for me, unfortunately, which was fantastic. I was able to get bite on them most of the time, keep throwing her around. She did get a couple good hits on me, flipping me over, but for the most part, I was able to keep control until eventually the back plate of her robot started to come open, and then eventually fully removed, and the battery came out as well. So, it was a lot of fun, and I wish I could have thrown a layer of duct tape on there before the match and kept going.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is a tough robot to fight, and I have to feel that someday Gwen's gonna get that dumpster too,
Absolutely.
for sure. So, yeah, definitely a good fight. Going out of that, the next fight was against Turbo Fiend, although for this event driven by Julian, normally driven by Dima. So, how was that for you? I have to like obviously so there was one event where I almost thought I was going to have to fight Julian and I was terrified.
Mm.
Um,
Fair.
but I also feel like that would be a really fun fight. How was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited for it. I fought Turbo Fiend back in April of last year, when Demo was still driving it, and got pretty handily beat. I was having a lot of issues that event, and it was kind of no contest. They blew me out of the water, so I was glad to get a rematch, get a second shot at redemption there. So I was super excited, and Julian is friends with quite a few of the Team WPI people here, so I've had quite a few conversations with him. He likes to poke fun, so I was super excited for it. And I felt like it was a really good matchup for me. TPU is kind of the enemy of beaters. It's very hard to do cutting damage when you're just hitting with a big blunt object. But uh, as far as Turbo Fiend goes, there are a lot of juicy points for me to catch, and that was the name of the game. Aim for the edges of the forks, aim for the sides of the uprights, anything that's not his weapon. And for the most part, that worked, but it didn't seem to work too well. We had a lot of good engagements. He ended up winning the first couple, and then I decided, hey, I have so much battery capacity, why not use it? And spun up to the fastest I could and just, tried pushing it as hard as possible. He ended up giving me the blade from the fight, which apparently was new at the start of our fight. So, the dulling on this is pretty impressive for just a single fight. It was an absolute blast. About a minute or so in, I ended up taking out his weapon. I never was able to ask what happened with it. I don't know if it was something just got unplugged or maybe some magnets broke, but I'm curious to know. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a good real test of me, my driving skills. Trying to get juggles and hit a robot twice or three times before it, gets a chance to sit. And I felt like I finally got a hand of the driving. It's been a long time that Blunder has been kind of questionable to drive. Getting shufflers tuned is quite annoying, quite frustrating, and so this was kind of the moment where I went, okay, I finally have it down. I'm finally feeling good, and yeah, I'm so happy that I got to get that rematch against Turbo Fiend and get another golden dumpster winner checked off.
Exactly. And Julian, I'm sure you're watching this. Please get in the comments and let us know what happened in that fight.
Julian, invite me to your live stream.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, with that fight, you knew that you had made the top four, which is amazing, and I believe that's what qualifies you for like the pro event and everything. So there's a lot of
Yeah, top four is for world champs.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all the way in December.
Yeah, yeah, that I mean that like that's great to get to that point. But you were up against Usagi, which I can honestly say I've watched that robot fight a lot, and at no other event, like I don't think it had ever looked better than it looked at that event up to that point. I mean, Alexandra was just wrecking it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure you had to at least feel some level of like trepidation going into it because it's a scary bot. It's a scary robot.
Absolutely. And I mean, the Black Cat Club, they're a pretty elite group of builders at this point. So every fight that I've had with them is always a scary one. Um, I fought Usagi back in February of last year, on my way to prime time, which was a lot of fun. That fight was terrifying. I did end up getting the judge's decision win, which felt great. And going into this fight, I had to remind myself, I won this matchup last time. I shouldn't be afraid of them. They should be afraid of me. So that was my mantra going into the fight. Trying to get myself out of my own head. But I felt a lot better about the matchup this time. I had transitioned away from my different top armor. Back in February, I kind of had a hodgepodge solution that didn't really work. And now I have full 2 mm AR top and bottom plates. So I was feeling that my electronics were impenetrable, but I knew there were a lot of weak points still, and it was still quite nerve-wracking. This fight was, a classic hammer saw control fight. Um, you know, the hammer saw config that I run has a lot of drawbacks. These AR plates are super heavy, top and bottom. The robot's really large. So I end up having to run a slightly smaller battery in this setup. I go back to my original batteries that I was having issues with. So you'll notice that a lot of the hits in this fight are very wimpy, which is not what I like to do with Blunder. I want to get big hits. That's the whole point. Massive weapon mass, but I have to spin slowly against hammer saws. You want to make sure you get full bite so that you're actually, picking them up and throwing them away from you. And I don't have enough battery to spin fast enough to really roof shot every time. So this was a very strategic match. You know, the forks on Usagi are very scary. So trying to get around just a little bit to get the sides of them instead of, getting face on is difficult. And Alex is a fantastic driver. So it's always easier said than done. But for the most part, I was able to keep them on their head, keep flipping them over anytime they tried to get back upright. And it wasn't really until the end that they got a couple good shots on me. Um, One of the shots hit, it's quite difficult to see. One of the shots hit right above my motor there. You might be able to see a little tiny dent. Um, that's what happens when a hammer saw hits AR 500. It's really, really good for me because I'm going to continue to use that plate for probably my entire life. But that hit ended up bending Usagi's blade enough to the point where it contacted their arm and stopped the motor from spinning. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're struggling against hammer saws, just add another 1.5 pound of robot and get some AR. Um, uh, but there's a lot more to it than that. This match could have gone their way easily. Any single mistake is easy enough to, you let my robot kick the bucket, and uh, it was a lot of fun. And this fight was super stressful for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like you said, like Black Cat Club, they have some really, really fantastic robots. And it's a difficult matchup no matter what robot you're facing. So,
Indeed,
um,
I feel so bad. I feel like I don't like terrorizing or beating up on cats, but I've fought them quite a few times now, and I promise I'm not. I don't like it either, but you know, fights are a lot of fun nonetheless.
yeah, exactly. You got to do what you got to do.
True.
Yeah. So that put you in the finals, which is wild. And you were up against Mark and Sting Operation. And I mean, I remember talking to Mark long time ago, back when he was primarily competing at G Scroll. And like
Mhm.
he has come such a long way with this robot. So I thought that it like just the story in general of both of you in the finals was amazing to have, two builders who have this bot that they've been working on for a while and just like got it to the point where it could reach the finals and, be up for a golden dumpster. Um, I mean, you probably weren't that excited to fight another hammer saw, right after the previous match, but
True
it
that.
it was a really really good fight. So talk about that one.
Yeah, I mean, Mark is an amazing guy. It's funny to mention that all of my fights during primetime were rematches, which is super interesting. But it just shows that you know it takes about a year for things to get really locked in and dialed in to the point where you can make these deep runs repetitively. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to get the chance to fight all of them again. And you know, coming out on top's always fun, but it's more important to get that experience and show what's improved. But I was super excited to fight Mark in Sting Operation again. Last time we fought back in February of last year as well. He kind of got a quick knockout on me. Um, you know, Cutting right through my bottom plate at that point. I didn't have any armor there, so you know it was a great job by him, and it pushed me to innovate and pull my robot up to the next level. And I actually got to hit next to Mark last summer at a Maker Battle Connecticut event, which was a lot of fun, and we got to chat a lot. And he's a fantastic guy and an amazing builder. And Sting Operation is scary. Going into that fight, my mantra of I won the match last time, they should be afraid of me doesn't apply because he totally kicked my butt last time. So this was quite scary, and finals is a lot of pressure, of course. But I'd been kind of preparing for the hammer saw matchups the last week before the event. I created a whole second chassis for my robot just to swap everything into so that hammer saws weren't as scary and I didn't spend all of my repair time preparing for them. So I was ready for this match. I knew what I needed to do and I knew what needed to happen. I'd beaten hammer saws before, and yeah, Mark is just terrifying to fight. But this match, he was actually running a center fork that had, I believe it's S7, an S7 toe on it, which is what you want to fight beaters. You want something sloped so that they can't bite on it as easily, and you want it way hard, so much harder than their weapon, just so that they can't grab it at all. And I would say it worked pretty well. I have my own trick up my sleeve. I have a special extra hard beater just for matchups like that as well. So I wasn't going in fully unarmed, but I was definitely still nervous about it. And if you watch the match, you'll see for a lot of the time, every time I go head on head with him, I'm bouncing up, I'm bouncing back, never getting him up unless I'm coming in at a slight angle. So it clearly works super well. In the first couple seconds of the match, he was pushing me around. He had a really good box rush, got me pinned up against the wall, and took a pretty good swing, just scratching the top of my right over where my battery is. And thankfully, I was able to escape without a second shot during that pin. And from there, the goal is just to get to the side a little bit, you know, any little bit helps. Any small edge is all I need. And thankfully, I was able to get a couple hits like that, and his drive side ended up going down. So a pretty early drive side loss, and it's unfortunate. I wish we had more of a fight, and maybe I'll get to grudge Mark or see him at finals. Who knows? But yeah, it was quite surreal. I don't know if there's a better word for it, but seeing his drive go down was uh, absolutely wild. I didn't even think that was a possibility. Sting operation has been so reliable pretty much forever, that it's really unfortunate. But at that exact moment, I couldn't help but feel just you know absolute you know elation building up inside of me. I was so excited that you know I was finally doing the thing.
Yeah, and not
um
not the bad thing, the good thing.
exactly. No, I fixed that issue. That doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, it was an absolute blast, and he was kind enough to give me his weapon from that fight, which he got a one really good shot on me, and it's got a little bend to it. So I am now very confident in my hammer saw armor, which thank goodness, because it seems like there's going to be a lot of them at both Pro Tour and finals. So I need to be ready.
That's for sure. Obviously you came out the victor in that match. Just talk about like the feeling of that, like realizing you won the golden dumpster. Did you go to bed and be like, I guess you told me so?
Yes, I did. Um, going up onto the stage to hear the judge's decision and whatnot, seeing all of Team WPI spread out behind the camera, it was such a wild feeling. And you know, Ben comes up, rushing the stage after the presentation, and he's like, "I told you so," which he did. He did tell me so. But it was honestly, it's still kind of unbelievable. I've been to many prime times before this, and each one coming up just short of even qualifying for championships. So it was ridiculous that I even made it that far, and then also won the dumpster. Like, it still doesn't feel real, but you know, I've been having an absolute blast showing this off at accepted students days here at WPI, and um, you know, getting a picture with Ben and our our dumpsters together. It's been absolutely incredible, and I'm so thankful for my team, and for everyone that's helped me, get to this point. It's been quite a journey, and yeah, I don't think it could have been planned any better.
Yeah, it certainly sounds that way. Now, what's next for Blender the rest of the year now that, like this is done? Obviously, you're going to be at finals. So, are you planning to going to other events?
Well, yeah, indeed I am. At the very minimum, I'm signed up for May NHRL, so that'll be a lot of fun. Um, at the moment, I'm signed up for RCE. So I don't remember what they're calling the April event, but the April event at RCE in Fitchburg. Um, that one I think I'm gonna end up going to. It's right after one of my big senior capstone projects deadlines, so we'll see how ready the robot is in the next day or two. But um, we'll be going to that, and I'm still iffy on the pro tour at this moment. I graduate from college, having the ceremony literally the day before, so we'll see. Maybe if NHRL has a really good pay scheme, I'll think about it. Maybe it's worth getting up at 4 a.m. after spending all day out.
Yeah, that sounds like a busy time for sure. Yeah, I mean, either way, I'm sure that, we'll be excited to see you back at the next event and everything else like that. I mean, I guess I don't know if it puts the pressure on or takes the pressure off to have been the former dumpster winner coming back and then like everybody wants to take you down. I don't know.
I know. I mean, the pressure is definitely on. But I'll say I feel really good. I can't say there's anyone I'm really scared of. Okay, I take it back. There's one I'm scared of, and that's Clyde. Don't put me near any flamethrowers, please and thank you. I love Gabe and Alex. They're awesome builders, but Clyde is scary. But the confidence is there at least. So if I have confidence, who knows what'll happen?
Well, see, now you've spoken this into existence.
I know.
So,
I've been speaking it into existence for the last like 2 weeks.
yeah. We'll see like if that occurs, I mean, if you find yourself towards the end, there's a pretty good chance that you could have to face Clyde. So,
Absolutely.
gotta prep for those flamethrowers for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, well, would be exciting, either way, but looking forward to seeing the next event. Obviously,
Thank
big
you.
congrats to you for your big win in April. And we'll see how the rest of the year goes. But um,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. But for anybody that's watching, please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, comment, all of that good stuff. We're definitely in the swing of things in robot season here, so there's much more coming your way. And we'll see everybody next time on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.